We'll be able to transition to a point where they will be helping the school principal as the main instructional leader. The school principals and the heads and their deputies have been bestowed with the role of being the instructional leaders within our schools. So as teachers, facilitate our role as the instructional leaders in the classroom, as we have mentioned in the 7 roles that I've talked about. And I'm going to summarize them here as people who are able to build instructional capacity within their classrooms and also within their running communities with other department members, as a source of knowledge and also as a model, as a mediator, and also as instructional leaders of the various running communities. We are not going to be stopping the role of the instructional leader there, because the classroom teacher, who is now in charge of their classroom and also in charge of their department, will also be called upon to help the school administrator in playing the various roles that they have been given by the ministry. So, for example, if we look at the institutional or instructional leadership of the principal, the roles that they are going to be playing within the school community, they will be cascaded to the classroom and to the department by the instructional leaders who have already acquired their position in the classroom. Because when we go to a school community, you realize that we have only one head and a deputy, and you'll be very lucky in some schools if you can have 2 deputies. And then these 3 people or 2 people may not be able to cascade the roles that they play as instructional leaders. They are the people who are in charge of discipline. They are the people who are in charge of financial management. They are the people who are in charge of the instructional management. They are the people who are in charge of the resources. They take care of our school resources. And as they play this, we call them the big 5. The big 5 major roles. They may not be able to do that adequately without the instructional leader. And that's why, as you acquire your position as an instructional leader in your classroom, do not forget that you'll be the instructional leader that will be able to assist the school principal in cascading all the other mandates that have been provided by the ministry. Because by the end of the day, we are expected to create a community of runners. A community of runners where the runners, the main runners will be the students. That is our mandate there. But also a community of runners in terms of all of us are going to be involved in lifelong learning. In our various areas, if they are STEM teachers, they will be involved in various communities of learning. If they are humanities, they will be involved in various communities of learning. If they are social studies and all that, they will be involved in various communities of learning. And as we engage in all these things, it is important to realize that our role as instructional leaders is going to be even lifted a little bit higher, because you're going to become the developers of missions and goals. As you sit with the school principals in various strategic planning meetings to come up with the various goals and objectives of the institution, then the teacher will be the one that will be cascading that same role to the classroom level, so that the students who are within the classroom and also the department members, they do understand very, very clearly what the role and the goal and the mission of the school is going to be. And then when we receive the input, the students who comes to us as raw materials, they will be coming to us as materials that are not processed. Then we shall be going through all the activities of schooling, both in the classroom, outside the classroom, and even outside the school environment, because we want to transform this one into an output. By the end of the day, we want to return that student to the community where they have the skills, the knowledge, and the attitudes needed for them to survive in the community. All those activities that will be taking place within the classroom, the school, the supervisory roles, the evaluation of instruction, the coordination of the various units, and they are also increasing. The pathway are even becoming more. And then the monitoring of the student progress is a role that is going to be shared between the principal and the teachers who have already assumed the instructional leadership in their classroom. You're also going to be helping the school principal promote the academic learning, promote a positive academic learning climate within the school. I listened to Dr. Mugu yesterday talk about some of the things that we are seeing in our schools. When we walk into our institutions, into our various institutions, we find different climates. There is an institution where you're going to walk into right from the gate, and it's going to communicate something positive. It's going to tell you that people here know what they are doing. They have prepared things that are visible right from the gate will tell you what the institution is all about. That one cannot be done by the principal alone. It will be done by the principal alongside with the people who have already taken up instructional leadership in their classroom. And then we shall also be helping our school principals and our school leaders to develop a support working environment. One of the things that I've asked myself, there are too many things going on in our schools. Too many programs. We have the TPAD, we have the TPD, we have all these programs that are coming up, and they are going to increase as we continue supporting the teacher as a professional. So you shall be working also with the school principals to be able to support the work environment, not just in your classroom, but also within the school. And that's where you're going to find ourselves acquiring other roles. Yes, you are a classroom instructional leader, but are you a class teacher? Are you the discipline master? Are you the deputy? We are going to be talking about the internal auditing later. Are you within the internal audit group? Because we have all these functions that the school leader is supposed to be involved in, and the teachers must help to cascade all this information within their classrooms. So as we think about ourselves acquiring the role of an instructional leader, we are not just acquiring the role of an instructional leaders within our classrooms, but we are also acquiring the role of instructional leaders where we have to team up with the school principals and their deputies to be able to cascade all these other functions as instructional leaders. You also be called to support the instruction. It's not just the school leader who is supposed to be supporting the environment. So when we come to your specific areas, you're going to organize activities that are geared to making sure that the environment is conducive for teaching and learning. We are going to get out of the point where we think that the school leader should be the one who should be providing. So that when we come to your institutions and we ask, where are the teaching aids, where are the teaching materials, where is the teaching learning center? And then we cannot be bringing the school leader because you are also an instructional leader working with the school leader to be able to provide all this. Resource acquisition and allocation. How is that one distributed within our various departments? Are we doing budgeting to make sure that all the resources are provided, all the teaching materials are provided, and also to ensure that we are supporting ourselves? Because if we don't support ourselves as teachers and as institutions, then we are going to find ourselves overwhelmed by all these responsibilities. So as we watch and the shift in the role of a teacher and also the role of the instructional leaders, a lot has been put on our plate. The quality controls, who is monitoring who, who is evaluating what, who is supervising what, who is rewarding who, and in the event that we have a mishap in the school, then who is supposed to be doing what. All these roles will have to be taken up by the instructional leaders who have already acquired their mandate as instructional leaders in their teaching and learning. There will also be the coordination of all the various activities that are taking place within a school. Look at the school becoming a heap or hype of runners, running communities for both the teachers and the students. With all these activities, and at times these activities can be duplicated, and they can also eat our time if we are not able to coordinate, timetable, schedule all these activities in a way that we are going to help ourselves as an institution. And then we are looking at a community of runners who are able to anticipate and foresee problems coming, and maybe even provide for solutions before the problems ever get there. We are living in an environment, as we looked at it yesterday, that can have a lot of threats. Our school environments have a lot of threats from external and internal factors. Are we able to sit and anticipate what is likely to happen? There are times within our school calendar when we know our schools are prone for some specific troubles, like during the examination time as we prepare for the exams. We have seen what has happened in the last two months. The students be getting burned out, the teachers are burning out, we are having systems collapse, students collapse, and then the students, psychologically and physically, they become drained. And are we able to troubleshoot? Are we able to put in place things and to foresee that we are likely to have these things, and we start putting them in place, strategies that can really help our institutions? So remember, this is a higher calling as instructional leaders, working with the school principals to really assist our schools, because by the end of the day, we want to make sure that our institutions are really running and doing whatever it is that we need to be doing. That brings me to the end of our second lesson, and the group activity for this lesson number 2 will be as indicated on that slide. I'm going to read as it is. Group task on the roles of teacher as instructional leaders and administrators. In your base group, having made reference to the lesson number 1 and the lesson number 2 exposition, you'll be expected to draw a Venn diagram. You'll be expected to draw a Venn diagram. This is a teaching strategy. And you'll be expected to show the common roles between a teacher as an instructional leader and as an institutional administrator. So you're not just being called to be an instructional leader in your own classroom and in your own department, but you're also being called upon to step in and assist the institutional administrator. So you'll be expected to draw a Venn diagram that can show the common roles between the teacher as an instructional leader and as an institutional administrator. And then we shall be sharing this information later in our groups. We shall be sharing this information later in our group processing as we conduct our activities from next week. That brings me to the end of our second exposition. I'm going to pause for a second as we think about what would be in the Venn diagram. For 1 minute, you think about what would be in your Venn diagram. You can even draw it, and then you are going to give us what is in one circle and what is going to be in the other circle and what is going to be in the middle part where we have the intersection of the Venn diagram. Let's pause for a minute as we proceed to our lesson number 3. I want to welcome you back to our third lesson in chapter number 5 on instructional leadership and financial literacy. I hope I'm clear, Dean.
Thank you, Daktari. We can hear loud and clear. Can you proceed?
Thank you. I want us to proceed to our lesson number 3 in the instructional leadership and financial literacy. We have looked at the transitioning of the role of a teacher from the classroom teacher, just a classroom teacher, to an instructional leader who is going to be in charge of their classrooms, and also who is also going to take care of the people in the department. We have seen the transitioning of that role into the role that will be assisting the school principal in the various mandates as the school principals have been governed by the ministry and by the TSC. We want to move this instructional leadership role a little bit further, because we all agree that one of the competencies under the CBC is digital literacy. And as we think about the role in the classroom, and as the Dean mentioned later on in April, we shall be equipping you with some instructional strategies that are going to help us integrate technology in our institutions. We want to agree that we have been called upon and we have seen the need for digital literacy for all of us. This has been the big elephant in the room for our teachers, where we have found ourselves struggling in ways in which we can adopt the technology. And then we are asking ourselves, how do we need to do this? How are we going to do this? And I remember when we piloted the TPD and we had a conversation with the teachers, this is one of the areas that was really came up as one of the major challenges in our institutions. But we all agree COVID has taught us very major lessons. When the schools closed down throughout the globe, and the students proceeded home and everybody proceeded home, the teachers and students in other countries, they did not just go home, they went to continue with instruction. And this came out very clear in countries, the developing countries, Africa and all other developing countries, including our countries. Our students went home. And a lot of things happened while our students were locked up in our houses. And it has come a point now, we can no longer hide our heads beneath the sand and tell ourselves that we are not going to adopt technology. One of the things that I'm glad about as we talk about the adoption of technology and the teacher becoming a designer of technology, we have also been able to demonstrate here as Mount Kenya University. I looked at the roster yesterday, the attendance, and We are more than 5,000 of us listening to us throughout this week. We have been able to deliver this instruction via technology, and we have been able to make it possible. And even after today, and in the weeks to follow and the years to follow, we shall be delivering most of these programs through technology. And this is the power of technology for all of us. So as we think about ourselves as classroom instructional managers, also teaming up with the school principal, we are thinking about also becoming the designers of technology in our classroom. This thing is not going to drive itself, it's going to be driven by all of us. And this is now the time when us as teachers, and I'm putting myself there because I'm one of you. Here in Mount Kenya University School of Education, we are part of you, we are supporters, you are supporters. And that's why we would want to support you to really seamlessly integrate technology within our setups. We want to really be able to support you in this area, and had listened to the Dean saying in April we are coming up with something that will really support our teachers. We also realize that there is a need for us to really up our game when it comes to the digital literacy as teachers, because the type of students we are receiving, right from the time they are born with these gadgets. They are holding these gadgets in their hands. They have their parents' cell phones. They have the laptops. Most of them have these gadgets at home. So by the time they are getting into your classroom, they already know how to utilize these gadgets. So the problem would be if they came into my classroom and they do not have the opportunity to use technology, then it means we will be the people that will really be pulling them behind. We are preparing them for the 21st century, where all these skills will be required, where they will be required to leave our schools and to travel within the globe, and they will be required everywhere they go. Digital is the new thing. If a student is checking in the airport, they check in right from their houses. They don't even have to go and check in out there. So imagine our children traveling all over the world and they cannot do these things because we never exposed them to the digital. So how do we do this? How do we do this? And this is going to be now our next component. I want us to look at this component. So we shall be looking at the strategy we are calling the TPAC. We are looking at the strategy we are calling the TPAC. Teachers, technological, pedagogical, content, knowledge. That is the meaning of TPAC, which is marked by integration of knowledge in all the three components. That is technology, pedagogy, and content. We have started by saying we are the carriers of content in our subject areas. That one will never be taken away from you as teachers. On top of being the content carrier in your subject area of teaching, you are also holders of the pedagogy, which is bestowed to education people only. So that is not going to be taken away from us. But what is likely to work against us and is likely to impact us is the third piece, what we are calling the technology. And this is where we are really being called upon to up our technology game and to also ensure that our digital literacy improves. And this is going to be done individually, because I don't think, even though we give collective programs somewhere, if you don't put effort as an individual teacher to really be able to improve your digital literacy, somebody else is going to manage to do it for you. And this is going to be one of the distinguishing characteristics of the 21st century teacher. Yes, you have the pedagogy and you have the content. Let's not sit there and become comfortable without the third piece, which we are calling the technology. We should be able to design technology, integrate learning with continuous use of pedagogy and content. First of all, we are comfortable in the content because we are the subject specialists, and we have seen how we have played that role very well in the classroom. We are also comfortable as teachers because we can design the teaching strategies, the teaching methodologies, and we are able to deliver instruction. We have no problem with that. But let's start considering the third piece that we are calling the technology, because that is what is completing what we are calling the TPAC here. Some of the factors that will become very, very crucial moving forward for all of us are what we are calling the teacher-related factors. And this goes to individual teachers. First of all, let's look at the confidence you have in the integration of technology. How confident are you when it comes to integrating technology with the pedagogy and the content? What is our attitude? I know in the past our attitude has been very, very poor. Because if our attitude does not change toward the technology innovation and technology integration, then it's not going to work. What is your willingness to be able to change towards the technology integration for our learners? This is really going to be the major component here. It doesn't matter what the government is going to do, because they can provide those computer apps. They are already there. Since time immemorial, the computer apps were put in schools. Instead, we barricaded those computer apps. We use so many, the grills, the bar, we lock those computers there. We lock them away from the thieves, and we lock them away from our students. We lock them away from our teachers. You go to the most of the computer apps, you find that those computers there are picking dust. So first of all, our ability and our attitudes to be able to integrate technology is going to be affected by some of these factors. It is becoming imperative to integrate teaching of informational technology into the regular curriculum. The message has come very, very clear during COVID that this needs to be adopted, and especially in the 21st century. For us to be able to do that, we need to look at what we are calling the TPAC model, the framework that is provided here for us. The number one there, the number one component, which we are calling the technology, which we are calling it the content, the CK. We have the CK there, which is the content. That one has already been given to us because we have said we are specialists in our own area of specialization. That is the CK. Then we have the component of the PK. We have the component of the PK, that is the pedagogical knowledge. That one, we have already gained that one through our various trainings. We have already gained that one through our various trainings. And these are the methods, teaching methods and strategies, and the models and the instructional designs that we use to deliver teaching. And then we are looking at the third one, the technology knowledge, that is the TK. That is the big elephant in the room, the technology. And I think even as we look at our curriculum at the university level, we really need to ask ourselves, how are we integrating these ones for teachers? And we are going to be asking the same, how are you going to integrate that one for the students? Think about that, because the content is what is the subject which you are teaching. That one you already know, you already have. You have no problem with that. Those people who are novice teachers, who are coming from our colleges, they may not have a lot of experience with the content, and that's why we take them through the peer teaching, we take them through the teaching practice, and then when they get into our school institutions, we also team them up with the department members. so that they can continue to grow this content area. That is what they are supposed to be teaching. And then the pedagogy content, this is developed throughout our college as we train you as teachers on how you deliver the content, how you make the content accessible. We have said there is a shift here from teacher-centered. We have said there is a shift from teacher-centered to what we are calling the learner-centered. So as we transition from teacher-centered to the learner-centered, then we really need to pay attention to the third one, which is the technological knowledge, that is the TK. This is now the how, the tools we are going to be using in our schools. This could be laptops, they could be cell phones, they could be projectors. We are using smart boards, we are using multimedia, we are using simulations, and we are going to be looking at very many of them in April, when we look at that in fusion of technology into the teaching and learning. So the question we ask ourselves as teachers, how are we going to bring these three together in our institutions? Because none of them is going to work in isolation. None of them is going to work in isolation. We need to start working towards this. Most of us are weak in the digital literacy, and we all agree, including myself. I'm learning something new every day digitally. We are all learning something new. I'm sure even Mount Kenya University has really learned a lot throughout this time, the whole of this week, where we have been delivering using technology. There is nobody who can sit here and tell themselves, I'm an expert in this area. Again, digital literacy or digital component, the technological component, is changing very fast. We are living in a dynamic world where changes are taking place. So before you can even master one of these softwares and one of these strategies, then another one will have come up. And that is why we are being called to be communities of learners who continue learning how to integrate technology. But the most important thing, this is for all of us to get started somewhere. For all of us to get started somewhere. So now, what will be the role of the teacher when it comes to the technology instruction? Again, we have been able to model throughout this week, and we are going to continue modeling as Mount Kenya University as we continue doing TPD and our other programs. The teacher should be able to plan and provide the electronic content for learners. Every time a presenter comes here, you hear they are sharing. Let me share. Dr. Benson says, let me unshare so that you can share. First of all, that content cannot be shared if it's not already prepared. We need to be able to plan and provide for electronic content for our learners. And you can see that these are well-structured, prepared lessons, prepared in a way that they can be shared. So a lot of preparations goes in the background when it comes to the teacher. And that is why, because you already have the content, you already have what to teach, you already have the strategy, the pedagogy, and then you can be able to prepare your materials. You have to transition your materials from the hard copy to soft copies, because soft copies will be shareable. And then, as teachers, we need to develop general skills of navigating through the computer and the social media. We also need specific skills in the various areas. If you are dealing with Word documents, if you are dealing with PowerPoint, if you are dealing with Excel, all these programs, they have a place, they have place. We have the softwares, we have the hardwares, we have a lot of information that is needed for all of us. So we didn't need to really tell ourselves we really need to acquire some of these skills. Dr. Benson mentioned something the other day. When you do your assessment, especially when it comes to the technology in fusion in our instruction, if you, for example, you find you are weak, if you find you are weak in a certain area, then you'll be coming up with a plan of how you can improve your digital skills. Some of us will be thinking, let me just enroll for a course somewhere, at least to have an idea on how to navigate on this platform. Because remember, you can never take your students where you have not been. If you are not digital literate, you cannot take your students there. And you can see now why they will be taking over your classroom, even though you are the carrier of pedagogy and the content. They are likely to take over your classroom because they understand these things better than we do. Then we are also supposed to be creating motivation for teachers and also for our students. Motivation to do what? To get involved in the digital. One of the aspects that I found very disheartening when it comes to our schools is that we want to rob technology out of our schools. Instead of asking ourselves as school community, how can we enhance technology at the same time staying safe within the schools? Pornography and all these things that our students are accessing through the internet, all these cyber crimes and all these things are not going to go away. Because they are not going to go away, we have to innovate safe ways of allowing our students to navigate through the digital materials and through the digital technology skills and through the digital gadgets and social media. And we can teach these students while they are with us. Let's teach them how to navigate that environment out there safely while they are with us, instead of waiting for the world to come and teach them. Because if you don't teach them within our schools, somebody somewhere outside there will teach them. And I'm sure when there's somebody outside there is teaching them, they are not teaching them the right things. So we need to create some motivation for our teachers, especially the ones who do not have the confidence, for our students, especially the ones who are coming from the rural areas. We all agree we are not endowed the same in our regions. We really need to ask ourselves, that student who is coming from that region where they have not accessed the digital technology anywhere, when they appear in our classrooms, how are we going to level the ground for them? Then we should be able to synchronize and unsynchronize the materials. You can see we have already provided for you the materials, the modules, the notes are there, the chapters are there, the activities, but at the same time we have been able to share the information digitally. We are teaching through the digital medias. You can be able to access these materials after. How can your students access the materials after? And how can we really make these materials available for the students? Through the use of emails, through the use of their cell phones, through the use of the various gadgets that we can use as institutions. And then the other role of the teacher will be to provide feedback to the students. And we have looked at the various types of feedback. We have looked at assessment. We have looked at the e-learning feedback that can be provided regularly to students, even to tell them how they are doing. Also the running of the management systems. We are using a running management system here that is helping us to navigate. We can see we have combined the running management systems here with also the Microsoft Teams systems so that we can be able to navigate. When we get to our management systems, we have the various tools there, the various navigation buttons. We didn't need to expose our students to all this, and that will be the role of the teacher. But it's going to be difficult if the teacher does not understand how to manage the running management system or the whiteboard or whatever it is, the system that will be used. And then how can they then help the students do the same? The teachers will also be the facilitators of learning. We have said that one is not going to be taken away from us. We are the content carriers. We should up our games as also be improve our digital literacy skills so that we can really manage to adopt and infuse technology in our teaching and learning. Cognizance, as we address ourselves, and I've said I'm putting myself there because I'm a teacher. We are cognizant that there are very, very many factors that will be influencing the adoption of ICT in the teaching and learning. I'm not going to go into their details. I'm not going to go into their details, but I want us to acknowledge that these problems are there. As we also ask ourselves as a community of runners and a community of teachers, how then are we going to really work towards, mitigating some of these factors? Some of them we may never get rid of them purely, but as institutions and as communities of educators, we need to start thinking about how then do we mitigate some of this. The ones we can mitigate, we mitigate. The ones that are at personal levels, where we can really work as individuals, we start working towards that, because I do believe I'm in charge of myself. You are in charge of yourself as a teacher. As a head teacher who is in that institution, you are in charge of yourself. But there are those ones that we are going to sit and try to figure out how to navigate them as a Kenyan community, because this is who we are. We are in the developing country as much as we want to adopt all these things. So we need to be cognizant that these factors are there, because when you acknowledge that we have a problem, we also, as educators, sit down and start working towards, retro by retro, how can we overcome some of these things that are really going to be major when it comes to the integration of ICT. Because the world has watched us go through the COVID, you can see this thing is evolving. We thought would be done. We can see we are getting into the 2022 when all these things are still in the air. Should we ever have a lockdown in our country and our students have to go home, are we going to sit there with our students home and say we cannot integrate technology? Well, the rest of the world moves over. So this is the time where we really need to think about some of these factors. No, they are there, but at the same time start working as educators to really put some of these things in place. Where you can do it individually, do it. Where you can do it collectively as a school, do it. Where the government can come in via the government. I think we are being told via the government, because we are the
Dr. Ruth, we cannot hear you clearly.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So I was talking about the factors. We have grouped these factors into several factors. First of all, we are thinking about the teacher or the personal characteristics of the teacher. This is where individual teachers will have to evaluate themselves and see how some of their personal characteristics may be affecting their integration of ICT into the teaching and learning. That is to do with education levels.
We have lost you again.
I'm back. I'm getting some interruption with the internet. So we are thinking about the personal characteristics of individuals, and this is where we can begin by looking at all of us, how our personal characteristics are working against adoption of ICT into the teaching and learning. We're also looking at the teachers-related factors, such as our confidence, our attitudes, and also our willingness to change, toward the adoption of technology. We also have the factors on ICT competences. There are various softwares and hardwares and all these programs, ICT program, the social media, and all this information. How competent are we in using them? We really need to really look at those factors, because they are really going to affect our ability to also infuse technology into the teaching and learning. We also have what we call the computer self-efficacy, which is the belief on one's ability to perform all these activities digitally. So we want to think about our competencies and our self-efficacy. How confidence, what do I believe about myself and the ability to integrate technology? Do I believe I can do it? Do I feel confident to do it? Because all these factors will really have an impact on our ability to integrate technology in our teaching and our learning. We have the aspect of gender. Men are more STEM-oriented. They take action when it comes to sciences, and when it comes to technology, when it comes to social media uptake and all this information, men will be at the forefront there. Are we communicating the same to our counterpart, the ladies, when it comes to gender? Because we find even research is showing that ladies take longer to adapt to technology than men. And because we are teaching both girls and boys out there, let's remove this notion that the ladies are likely to lag behind when it comes to the adoption of technology. And if the research showing out there is true, then how can we start beating these ladies? Because I'm sure we have ladies who are very, very good in the technology. We have ladies that are very good in technology. And as I look at also our ICT team here in Mount Kenya University, let's start seeing some faces of ladies in the ICT department. Where are they? So that, because we are communicating, we model these things. When it comes to infusion of technology, let our gender not be an issue. We also look at the teaching experience. If I'm well versed with my content, remember the CK, the content part of technology, of TPAC. If I'm well versed in my area of specialization, I'm going to start feeling confident integrating some technology. Also, if I'm well versed with my pedagogy part, the teaching methods, the teaching strategies, the delivering strategies, if I'm well versed with that, I'm going to start feeling confident tackling the third one. But if my experience, my teaching experience is lagging behind with these other two, the CK and the PK, then it becomes very difficult for me to start thinking about technology. Because technology is a tool for me to deliver instruction in a different platform than the face-to-face traditional one we are used in the classroom. So I'm going to be as confident to use technology if I'm well versed in my area of specialization and also with my pedagogy. And that's why the teaching experience again plays a very critical role here. We are also talking about the workload. This is not going to go away, teachers. We have said free education for all, 100% transition, or the Kenyan child is going to be in your classroom. That one is not going to go away. It's not going to disappear. So we can no longer be using it as an excuse, because it's not going away. Workload will be there, because there is a workload that is required by the ministry. The workload is not going to be there. But we do agree that if the workload, we have seen there are other instructional leadership duties that the teachers are holding. You are not just a classroom teacher delivering instruction using your CK and the PK. You are also holding other instructional leadership roles. That workload is likely to affect the infusion of technology, because if I cannot be able to handle whatever it is that I'm supposed to be teaching, then even thinking about adoption of technology is going to be a little bit difficult for me, and we can see why people will be hesitant to adopt technology. Then we have the institutional factors. These are very, very many of them. We do not have power, we do not have the software, we do not have the hardware, we do not even have the support itself, the ICT support. Infusion of technology comes with, I tell you, a serious group of supporters. We have seen what Carolo and the group have been able to do to support this program. Without them, we would not have delivered. Our institutions wired with this kind of support. Do we have enough supporters of ICT, the infusion of technology? Because it is technical. At times there are technical things that me as a classroom teacher, I may not be able to know, maybe something Karuru would understand. When something is not working within the system, they are able to understand and to sort us out. So we are going to have quite a number of many institutional problems. The capacities within our schools, even as we look at the day schools and we look at the boarding schools, as we look at the entire platinum of teaching in Kenya, institutions being adopted differently, various institutions will be having their own institutional problems. And then we have the professional development, capacity building. I don't know how many trainings we have attended here in MKU on this ICT thing. Instructional leaders getting to know that your teachers can only become better as they are being exposed. As we talk about them working on their digital literacy, it's not going to come automatically. We need a lot of training, professional development training, exposing people to all these types of training. And then we have the accessibility of ICT, the internet out there, the power, and all these things that we are talking about. The infrastructure, the ICT infrastructure is not the same in our schools. And we didn't need to think about these factors. We also need the leadership support from our institutional leaders. They need to be at the forefront to support all this, especially when it comes to the infusion of technology, buying of the software, the hardware, and all these things. They need to make it part of their strategic plan, that at least we can begin somewhere. We may not all be at the same level, but we can begin somewhere. And then we are looking at also the technological characteristics with all the changes that are happening technologically, the world becoming a global village, our students being exposed to a lot of information out there. So, and also so many changes that are taking place when it comes to technology. All these are major factors that are really going to affect our infusion of technology. So as we think about how we are going to become the instructional leaders, the designers of the instructional technology within our schools and within our teaching, let's think about these factors, but also let's not make them a hindrance for ourselves, because it has reached a point where we really need to start addressing some of these factors. We really need to start addressing them, and the institutions begin somewhere. At least the institutions need to begin somewhere. With that one now, it brings us to our third group of task. This is where I shall be ending and ushering in my colleague. Our third group task will be, I'm going to read it as it appears. group task on teacher as instructional designer for learning. In your base group, you're supposed to discuss and demonstrate the role of the instructional leader as a technology designer for learning. You identify ways in which technology can be integrated in the curriculum delivery. Demonstrate your understanding of the factors that influence the integration of technology in instruction. And then you share these responses with your member groups. And then you prepare for a joint presentation, which you shall be sharing with a large group. That is the group task for our lesson number 3 on chapter 5, instructional leadership and financial literacy. I'm ushering in Dr. Benson to take us for a short break. And then from there, my colleague, Dr. Kenei, shall be presenting the 2 other lessons that are remaining as we look forward to having a way forward this afternoon. Thank you, teachers, and I wish you well. Dr. Benson, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth. We appreciate you. You have taken us through in a very simple way. We have understood at our level. We really appreciate you. You remain a good link for the teachers with your vast knowledge on school leadership, the issue of instructional design, and your very, very good exposition skills. We really appreciate you. We have understood so much. It's not my praise, but we we'll go through the Q&A, then you'll be able to respond to the questions and maybe you receive the feedback from our teachers. Otherwise, with those few remarks, we wish that we break for about 20 minutes. Director, ICT. Director ICT. Hello.